Hey everybody, this is Bob from This Non-Religious Life recording in the Zombie Popcorn headquarters. Today is October 21st, a day of monumental importance. Today is going to be a day where we're all going to look around and realize nothing happened, despite what Harold Camping had to say about it. So in honor of this event and to preview an upcoming show, I thought I would run down our list of our top 10 doomsday predictions that did not come true. Starting off the list, number 10, Y2K. And I have one word, dud. Number 9, I included in the list because it was absolutely the strangest doomsday prediction I've ever seen. The 1806 Prophet Hen of Leeds, where a chicken is laying eggs with the words, Christ is coming in them. Number 8 is a little example of science gone wrong. The 1910 Halley's Comet scare, where we thought the world was going to pass through the tail of Halley's Comet and we would all perish in a mist of cyanogen gas. Number 7, Joseph Smith, 1835 to 1891, where he predicted that the world would end in roughly 56 years, give or take some. Way to really narrow it down there, Joe. Number 6, Pat Robertson, and I do like his specificity in this one. He said, I guarantee you by the end of 1982, there is going to be judgment on the world. All right, Pat, I'm still waiting. Another one of my favorites, number 5, 1914 Jehovah's Witnesses. And when 1914 came and went and nothing happened, the Jehovah's Witnesses doubled down and said, well, Jesus is here. He's only invisible. Which brings me to number 4, the 1834 Millerites, who admit that nothing happened, and now it's known to them as the Great Disappointment. Number 3, the May 29th, 1997 Heaven's Gate disaster, where Marshall Applewhite took 36 of his followers up to meet the mothership. And what list would be complete? Number 2, Nostradamus, August 1999. Somehow somebody read his rhymes and figured that August 1999 would be it, and Nostradamus he's always right. So, I don't know, maybe we can look back on that. And of course, number 1, Harold Camping's May 21st / October 21st prediction. And here it is, October 21st. We're all still here, and we're going to be talking about doomsday predictions, and more specifically, failed doomsday predictions on an upcoming episode of This Non-Religious Life. So stay with us.
Jesus got out here.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Jesus got out here. Then I read this. It says Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian.
The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ spreads confusion and promotes.
Hey everybody, Thursday, October 27th, This Non-Religious Life. I'm your host, Ken. With me via a very far distance, we have our co-hosts, Bob
How's it
and
going?
Jason.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about all sorts of fun stuff, including the end of the world that didn't happen earlier this week.
Very sad.
Oh yeah, I was very upset. So, like the last prediction Harold Camping made, it came and went without much ado.
There was the earthquake 2 days later
Yeah.
in Turkey, but
Yeah.
that obviously had to be associated with it because it occurred within 2 days, and
Of course.
it was in Turkey, and didn't devastate everything, but it was pretty bad. So we're going to count that as a win. We're going to count that
Okay.
as...
I live in California. If I didn't feel an earthquake on that day, like if I didn't, that's almost miraculous. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm really digging the rationalizations that are being tossed around, and I think my favorite is that there was a judgment day and a rapture. It was just so few people were taken up, we didn't notice.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they said anyway. Said that
So
we wouldn't
few.
know.
You know.
So few, I can count them on no hands.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna run out of excuses sooner or later.
No,
like,
they won't.
I don't understand how many. Like, there have been so many predictions that have had to been rationalized after the fact. Like, well, Jesus was invisible. Oh no, Jesus entered the temple, but it's in heaven. No, it all happened, but it's just spiritual rapture. No, I mean.
Well, even with this
How
one, you
many-
said that Brother Mike sent out an email saying that.
Yes, I was patiently waiting for his email. I knew he was going to send one out, and he did.
And like
But
clockwork.
it wasn't the email that I thought we were going to get. Oh, so Brother Mike, for anyone who's new to the show, is the reason why we started this show. It was almost a year ago now. Not quite a year ago, I guess. It was last early spring or last late winter or something like that. We were going to do a show on The Talking Dead about the May 21st prediction. At the last minute, Brother Mike wants to come on, and Brother Mike runs the website May21st, 2011.com. But he sent out this email on October 22nd, the day after they thought the world was going to be absolutely destroyed after 5 months of perdition. And he essentially just says, seeing it is now clear that the Lord did not return on October 21st, we are left with two possible conclusions. One, the Bible calendar of history discovered about 40 years ago is incorrect in some way. Two, the Bible calendar of history is correct, but we're missing some additional information. He's now convinced, essentially, that based on more, like, BS half readings and stuff like that, that the end of the world will be... Where is it? Possibility is bolded that we will be caught up, raptured on Resurrection Sunday, so Easter Sunday next year.
So all he's done is given himself license to refigure the date as often as he pleases.
Yes.
Until it happens.
Right, until something happens, which I doubt it will be the rapture, but that's an ingenious method of backpedaling. Oh wait, I got new information, and that new information
This just in.
says I can, but here's the thing: they don't really get new information. They haven't had new information.
No, there's new chapters added to the Bible every
Right.
year.
Right. There's no new information provided. It's not like, remember we talked about this too. Like, it's not as though somebody in an archaeological dig somewhere, uncovered an unknown gospel or some, heretofore unknown translation or some document that provides new information. It's just the same old information rehashed over and over again so that they can say anything they want.
Yeah. And I
Smoothie?
mean, that's what people have been doing for 2,000 years with Christian, like apocalypticism. It's, they have their copy of the Bible, and especially now because it's not even like they're using different translations half the time. They're almost always using the the King James Version, which is 400 years old now.
It's just brother Mike's backpedal rationalization is all it does is it's just licensed to make another stab at it. It doesn't admit that they were wrong. It doesn't admit that anything occurred on their part. It was all according to plan. It's just now this new information has been revealed to us, and that's part of the plan too.
Yeah. They'll never admit that they're wrong. And it's got to be like the cognitive dissonance has to be like so heavy at this that like to admit that they were wrong about it, their entire world's going to crumble. Because like people like Brother Mike, he's made his entire life for the past like almost a year all about this. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, caravanning and putting up billboards and going on radio shows.
I know. And what about all those people that spent their life savings? Because he's not alone.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, these people have a vested interest in watching the end arrive, and that part is almost tragic.
Yeah.
So I was doing some reading because I wanted to read about like the psychology of doomsday prediction. Like why do these things keep happening over and over and over and over again, even though they're 0 for 200 or so. And one psychologist, I forget his name, but and he seemed to represent the prevailing opinion was that the doomsday. The fixation with the doomsday prophecy is born out of cognitive dissonance, and it's that you have if you what it is you believe in this perfect creator, but yet you look around and you see the imperfections in the world, and so what drives that is like, well, obviously this perfect creator has to set the world right. And he's going to do it in one clean sweep, and that's where the doomsday prophecy comes in, because it reconciles the perfect creator with the imperfect world.
Yeah, and in Christian and Jewish and Islamic apocalypticism, that's completely true. When you go back and look at the apocalypses that appear in the Old Testament. Especially Daniel, which is the most developed one. It's all about the fact that these Jews living in Palestine at the time, they were under the thumb constantly of some empire, for as far back as they could remember. But they believed in this God that had chosen them to be, his perfect people, and they couldn't rationalize how they could be so oppressed and yet still have their God. So it's sort of this thing that shit sucks now and it's going to get worse, but then it's all going to be better and it's going to be awesome and we're going to have this kingdom and it's going to be amazing. Streets of gold and,
Yeah, well, I think it's one interesting thing about it is that not all of the when we did our Doomsday Top 10, not all of them were born out of religious fervor, like the Y2K bug, which turned out to be nothing. But I think that the Y2K bug was able to take hold because we do have this sort of inherent dissonance in our view of the world. We look around in the world, we'd like the world to be perfect, but it's not. And so I think we fall prey to those kinds of ways of thinking.
But I think also it could be even more sinister than that. With the Y2K, people were saying that it was really just in the same vein as Christmas and all the other corporate holidays, to encourage an economic boost to cause fear, to get people to stockpile and buy a lot of needless stuff, kind of like the way Christmas does. But this was more of.
I don't think that there was like a global. I don't think there was a global force that was like making people get crazy. I do think.
Well, if you plant the seeds, I mean, if anytime that you from history, anytime that you mention that there's going to be a disaster, it doesn't matter if it's the end of the world, doesn't matter if it's false hurricanes like we just experienced, people go ape shit. And where do they go when they go ape shit? They go to the nearest store.
Yeah, but like I don't think it was like I don't think there was like a cabal of. We lost Kenny.
No, keep going.
I don't think there was like this cabal of people that got together and were like, hey, how can we, artificially create this economic boom?
Well, I'm not saying that they artificially fixed it. They said, well, there's this potential that we may lose our computers. We may have this. It may fall apart. And then, with what we've seen with media that. Motherfucker.
I'll tell you what, though, man. The last few months of
The
1999.
person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
God,
He went off completely offline. There he goes.
It's got a nice beat, but you really can't dance to it.
Where'd you go?
Hey, welcome back.
Hey, yeah, I lost you guys for a second.
It was the cat. Blame the cat.
It said you went offline.
It said you went offline.
I hung up on you, but it said Zombie Popcorn has gone offline, and then it said you came back online, so I called you again.
That's what it said. Anyway.
That's what it said about you.
Yeah.
Anyway, see, as I said, it was a conspiracy that once we start talking about it, they kill our conversation.
Yeah. Skype is at the head of it.
Like if I
Wait, owns Microsoft.
if I owned like Bob's survival gear,
you'd be like, woohoo!
You bet I'm going to be putting commercials on TV and tapping into that hype. I mean, people do that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but
every
people are
report,
capitalize on
no
it.
matter what happens, especially a spiritual disaster like the end of the world, Texas always. It seems like anytime something like that happens. Like Y2K with End of the World, they say there's always an article that comes out a couple of weeks afterward that said the two most purchased things over food, water, everything was Bibles and guns.
And Texas is leading the charge.
Right.
So
I don't know if it's necessarily a sinister application, and I mean
everything's
in our
sinister.
Commercial world, it very well could be. I mean, that's what religions do to get followers, right?
That's what I'm saying.
The threat of hellfire and perdition really helps them.
Yeah, but I think that the Y2K thing was
monetary base.
Y2K was artificial.
No, I'm saying they knew. I mean, it was artificial in terms of that they didn't plan it and plan on from creating the Y2K bug, but they knew the Y2K bug was a potential, so they hit the media and.
Yeah, I don't think stockholders in any companies like that were complaining. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely a payday for them.
Yeah, but there's another there's another. It's like the 8-bit bug or something like that. That's that's creeping up on us.
And Kraftwerk didn't invent it.
And like guys are like tech guys are saying like this is going to be more of a problem than the Y2K bug, and they may be right and they may be wrong, but nobody's hyping that one up yet anyway. But I think.
Well, when does that due?
2032. I
yeah,
think.
give it time.
Yeah,
give it time.
December 21st, 2012.
.com.
Well, that's another one that'll.
Can't wait for it.
I think that's the next. That's our next apocalypse.
Well, that's the biggest one because it doesn't just encompass Christians.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are not Christians that believe in this too. So
well, I'm really excited because actually, by 2012, I will have lived through 4 apocalypses.
Yay! And what's also doubly exciting about that? Guess what happens in Mexico at the Mayan ruins in December? Elton John's playing a concert.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
for the
That's awesome.
doomsday.
Way to be, Elton John. Way to be.
Not that I'm an Elton John fan, but I just think
You
it's
can do
funny that
whatever.
he's like, the end of the world. I'm going down there. There's gonna be a lot of people down there already. Get a concert going on.
He's a knight. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
You know, like
Can you imagine, like, talking to you, like, people talking to their grandkids, like, I lived through 4 apocalypses, son, and none of them did anything.
But I have a feeling you're gonna by the time you reach your deathbed, you're gonna say there's gonna be a lot more than 4.
yeah, I'm sure you've lived through more than 4 now. Like,
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the big ones. Like, I don't know if so we also covered Nostradamus. He said 19 August. It was the quatrain said something about the 7th month of 1999, and some people took that to mean that at the end of July, beginning of August. So depending on where you read it, he says that that's going to be the end of the world. And I love the fact that Nostradamus doesn't mean anything. Like, he was just some guy making up rhymes. It's like, I guess it would be akin to finding meaning in, like, Puff Daddy lyrics. Just dudes making
Hell
up
yeah.
rhymes.
But there are meaning.
There's meanings that you assign to them.
Just
And I guess this was one instance where they you know, he explicitly says a date. And you know, July, August 1999 came and went. Nothing happened. So you know, there's nothing. There's no there. There's nothing to it.
yeah.
And I don't even hear any rationalizations about that one. I mean, at least everybody's like, oh, that's a miss. And the thing with predictions too is you remember the hits and forget the misses.
But what
Sure.
hits have happened?
Well, and that's the funny thing about Nostradamus too, is that there's some people that assign hits based on loose interpretations of his quatrains.
Yeah.
So what the criteria for determining a hit is very fast and loose too, and you know, depending on who you ask, there are no hits. And did you see the thing where the one guy was like, he just sort of tried an experiment where he made up a Nostradamus-y sounding quatrain and sort of put it out on the internet that described the 9/11 attacks, and everybody latched onto it. Everybody
shit.
was like, "Oh my God, look, see, Nostradamus predicted the 9/11 attacks," and it turns out no, he did. This guy just made it up.
What? It's funny how we latch on to shit like that. It's like people are. I guess that's why it's so easy to control. Is because people latch on to destruction like that so quickly. Like, they're trying to find meaning in life so badly that you can give them something that, sure, face value, it sounds good and it sounds like it could be true, but until you start looking at it deeply, if it falls apart. People just like don't take it to that next level. They're just like, oh my God, Lord.
Oh my God.
And it's weird how, I mean, a lot of people do it. I mean, because there's a organic store that is here, and every time I'm in there are people talking about the craziest shit, and I'm just like, no. I mean, like, I had to Wikipedia the other day because somebody's like, we only use 10% of our brains. I was
That's
like,
not
no,
true.
and they're like, no, it's true. And I'm like, no. And I pulled up an article and go, read this, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah. Well, that's a meme that's taken hold.
Oh my
I don't know
gosh, you
why.
don't know how many people believe it.
That's
like, if we
new
leave-
age hippie shit too.
Yeah, it's just like,
There's a reason why most people aren't like neurosurgeons.
yeah.
I just want to show them an example of somebody who actually uses 10% of their brain. They're just,
Yeah.
I mean, like 90% of your brain is just controlling your body functions. You know.
Yeah. But I think that I think I understand why people latch onto these things or latch onto these these Nostradamus predictions. I mean, it's hard, right? People try to find a meaning in life and a purpose in life, and I think that this belief in prophecy it assigns an order to an orderless universe, and people find it comforting, even if that prophecy is one of utter destruction. It still makes people. It provides a comfort that, like, hey, there's a plan. There's some plan. Somebody's steering the boat.
But I mean, even if there's not a plan, we're still fascinated with it. I mean, there's parts of our society that are fascinated with meteorites hitting our Earth, whether it's attached to any spiritual thing at all. It's just the chance that we can be destroyed by a meteorite.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would hope that there are astronomers fixated with looking for meteorites that are going to hit the Earth,
but for the right reasons, not just because they're excited that the world's going to be destroyed.
Have you ever there's an astronomer, he blogs for the Discover site. Is it Discover? I think it's Discover.
Discover the magazine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's Discover. His name is Phil Plait, and he's the bad astronomer. And he wrote a book called Bad Universe. And every chapter in the book is these doomsday scenarios. Like, this is the stuff that will really kill us all. And they're actual plausible things that will happen eventually, but the universe is so vast and large and old that the chances of them happening during our lifetime or anybody's lifetime are incredibly slim. But they could happen. They are happening, and these are planet-killing events, like getting hit with a 6-mile wide asteroid. Right? It happened. It's already happened. Once, maybe twice, but it could happen again.
Yeah.
And so there's a very real thing there. Yeah, but there's a very real, tangible threat there, and but what's interesting about that though is that knowing about the threat and having the technology level that we have today, there's people that are thinking of ways like, well, if that does happen, how can I stop it? And we could stop it. There's things we could do.
Well, I mean,
but you can't stop God rapturing up the faithful.
Well, I mean, like even one of your top 10 that we did on the video earlier in the week about Halley's Comet, the going through the tale of Halley's Comet.
Well, that was all right. So that's an interesting story too, right? So it's 1910, and science is just figuring out spectroscopy, and so they're looking at the tail of Halley's Comet and they're analyzing it. It's being analyzed spectroscopically, and somebody looks at it and says, hey, there's cyanogen gas in the tail of that comet, and we're going to pass right through it. And the whole world freaked out, but that was because somebody took that. I think it's very similar to Y2K in that somebody took that and promoted it as a doomsday apocalypse. I don't think any mainstream scientist was like, oh my God, don't breathe that day or whatever, right?
Don't breathe it.
And a lot of people took advantage of that. There was all kinds of quack cures where people were selling anti-comet pills and anti-comet umbrellas.
And that's what I was saying about with Y2K, that it was hijacked and turned into a thing like Christmas, a big consumer.
Yeah. But, fortunately for the 1910 Halley's Comet thing, clearer heads prevailed, and the right science guys stepped forward and went, no, it's going to be okay.
We have a protective shield.
Yeah. I mean, there was cyanogen gas. It was just so diffuse and so sparse that it didn't bother anybody. There was no effect.
But it's just, I mean, like we're going back to just people are fascinated with doomsday stuff. Doesn't matter where the source is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, one, the idea that civilization goes on for possibly forever, without any visible end in sight, is something that most people just can't wrap their heads around.
Well, I mean,
it's easier for these people. A lot of these people are religious. It's easier for them to believe that, the Earth has been around for 6,000 years than the Earth has been around for, 4.3 billion years. It's easier to think that humans were created 6,000 years ago than, humans evolved 200,000 years ago.
Well, we're
I
also
think a lot of it has to do with numbers,
yeah.
you know? And the other thing is, every generation ever has always thought that the next generation is somehow, you know, more degenerate than the one before it.
Well, that's a proven fact.
So, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, everyone's grandparents are like, you know, in my day, you know,
Get off my lawn.
yeah, and there's nothing to it,
That's gonna be me.
but it's perspective, you know.
Yeah.
And when you look at it that way and you say, you know, the last generation was you know, the last generation was awesome and this generation was crap and everything's going down the toilet. It's easy to then, like, you know, graph that to be like, you know, yeah, the end of the world's coming because, you know, the world's going to turn into something out of, you know, idiocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I've never looked at it that way, but I wonder how that mindset can be maintained when, you know, look at the generation before, you know, 50 years ago, women were fighting for equal rights, civil rights was just getting going, and there was no such thing as gay rights. I would consider people that, like, socially were despicable then.
It's actually reversed than, you know,
Yeah,
generations before were like, what the?
I know, like, I think about the things that my grandparents and my parents, you know, the times they lived in it, and I'm like, that's awful. Like, I can't believe that.
But they had 10-cent hamburgers.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, like, I mean, it's funny that you mention that, because I would argue that it's getting better and not worse. And how do people perceive it as being worse?
It's just social conservatism, you know?
yeah.
You see the past as being something that it was, you know, tradition, essentially. And things are changing. And, you know, as you get older, you become more and more out of touch with the way progress goes. And so it's easy to be like, you know, oh, in my day, you know, we, you know, kept slaves.
I don't want to say that, because I
what
don't
do
want
you
to say
mean?
in
What
my
do you mean
day I
they
used
have-
Windows 95.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, and it's funny because when we were filming I wasn't there for the filming because I was sleeping, but after you guys did the film earlier in the week, the top 10, you know, we were joking around and looking at these lists of apocalypses, and I don't know how true it is, but one of these websites is A Brief History of the Apocalypse, and the first one listed says just that. According to Isaac Asimov's Book of Facts, 1979, an Assyrian clay tablet dating to approximately 2800 BCE was unearthed bearing the words, "Our earth is degenerate in these latter days. There are signs that the world is speedily coming to an end. Bribery and corruption are common." And that's exactly it, you know? Like, people are looking back, and I mean, this is almost 5,000 years ago. You know, the half of human civilization, you know, looking back at, you know, the previous couple generations and saying, you know, shit was so much better back in, you know, 3000 BCE.
Yeah.
Nothing
And
ever
it's-
changes, does it?
It's funny. What's that?
I said nothing ever changes, does it?
No.
Well,
no.
just-
yeah.
Crotchety old people will always be crotchety old people, you know?
But I mean, I do think we're on a pivotal point of changing our thought. I mean, it's like growing up. I'm sure it's true for all of us. Growing up, we were taught, or at least told at one point in our time, that our universe is going to collapse upon itself. It's part of the explosion. It expands, and it no longer expands, and it comes back, and that's how the universe ends. But a study just recently came out saying that our universe is expanding faster than what we ever thought.
Was it, that was a there was a name for that. There was
Big
the
Bang, Big Crunch theory.
Yeah, the
or
Big
something.
Crunch. Yeah, Big Crunch.
Yeah.
But now, right? But that was the Big Crunch was for a time it was a viable model that was held up as a consensus opinion. This is what they thought would happen, but now they know better, and a lot of people are moving away from the big crunch. Now they call it the big. There's something when the universe would expand to such an extent that everything became so diffuse.
Yeah,
that even space time itself.
Yeah,
the
it's
entire
just
universe goes into a state of entropy, and it's just like it fizzles out.
But those are. It's not like that's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah,
and those are things that theoretical physicists, those are things that they think about. I mean, if you could posit a natural beginning to the universe, then the next thing is how do you think about the natural end of the universe, and is there an end to the universe, and where do they draw those lines in the sand, and fine, those things are interesting to think about, and I'm sure lots of it is speculation, and maybe there's some math to support it, but that's way beyond. That's not even in the same ballpark as guys like Harold Camping saying the world.
No, I'm not trying to put them in. I'm just saying that teaching of us growing up has always been. It's like, well, why should the world's going to end anyway? It's always you can say the world's going to end. Somebody can tell you that, and you can ask them why, and they can give you a full list, and that part is usually in that list.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think it's kind of a moot issue anyway, because by the time that happens, even if it does, and we don't know, but what they do know will happen is that the sun will burn out, it'll expand into a red giant, and it'll eat up the first 3 planets. So there won't even be an Earth to be present for that event.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I was going to get my cameras out.
But
what do you think about global warming then? I mean, going just in the same vein of the world going to end type stuff, global warming is our most recent one.
But that's not an end to the world. I mean, that's
end of our civilization, and the way we view, as humans view it, is the end of our world.
I don't necessarily think it'll even be the end of civilization. I mean, the Earth has a manner of regulating its own climate. As warming gets higher and higher, the Earth will compensate by, like the oceanic conveyors will shut down, and the Earth will plunge into another ice age, and it'll cool itself off. If humans could survive the ice age in loincloths, I'm sure we'll be able to do it in skyscrapers. Will it be pleasant? No.
No, I think the skin and the pain tolerance was much higher with the people in the loincloths than the people in the skyscrapers.
I mean,
it can be 85 degrees outside, and people are like, "What the fuck, man? Give me the air conditioning."
Pain tolerance, maybe, but I mean, bear in mind, the last ice age, those were fully formed, anatomically similar Homo sapiens sapiens.
Well,
so.
Yeah, but global warming, climate change, whatever your stance on that is, that's something that we can fix. That's something.
Well, I mean, according to the reports, whether you agree with it or not, that are out, there's a tipping point it comes to a point that we can't fix, and
that right, but
because for everything that we put out, there's a 100 years plus time to balance that, and as long as we keep producing it keeps building up, and we have thousands of years out before it fixes itself.
So 1, that may or may not be true, and 2, where is that tipping point? Nobody can pin it down.
Actually, they can. There's reports that are saying
right, but one guy says the tipping point is here, another guy says it's there.
No, I mean, I think their consensus has come out that there's an agreeing tipping point.
All right, well then, are we there yet?
We're very close.
Then it's not too late.
Yeah.
But that we're not trying to argue if global warming's real or if it's not, and if the science is real or not. We're trying to talk about, again, with doomsday and end of the world and end of our life, of just that philosophy of people jumping on. And
I would agree that is the global warming presents a plausible doomsday scenario, and it's not one that's going to happen quickly. It'll happen slowly, but I think that unlike the wild predictions of religious zealots, it's something we can fix. It's something that we can steer. It's something that we can avoid. I mean,
But religious people don't. I mean, they've come out and said on the Christian side of it that if global warming's real, they don't care because it's in God's plan.
Right, and that is exactly a point in that people need to stop thinking about when they're going to get raptured up and start thinking ahead to the real world and how to solve real world problems.
But they don't
and
care about it.
Be concerned about sustainability and not thinking that they're going to get raptured in their lifetime, but they need to be thinking 50, 100 years down the line.
Yeah.
I agree with that 110%. and I think that the religious doomsday scenario prevents us from tackling the real doomsday scenarios.
Yeah.
God damn them.
You can't. They're God planned it.
The religious doomsday stuff is, I find it personally fascinating because it really, I think it really stems from a lack of education in literature. I think it does, because almost all of it stems out of the inability to read metaphor.
Yeah. I thought you were just going to say inability to read.
Yeah. Apocalypticism in the Bible is almost always they're just trying to cloud and build metaphor around some sort of like socio-political critique. When you're reading the book of Daniel, it's a critique of the Seleucid Empire and Antiochus IV, who is the emperor in the 2nd century BCE. When you're reading Revelation, it's a socio-political critique of the Roman Empire at the time. When you read the apocalyptic passages in Jeremiah, it's a political critique that is trying to legitimate the establishment of the dual monarchy of the Davidic king and the high priest, and the establishment of a temple system. It's always something, but people typically at the time of these writings understood what it was. It was never a mystery to them. People reading Daniel in the 2nd century saw it and they understood that Nebuchadnezzar was supposed to represent Antiochus IV.
Well, if the people reading it at the time, if they understood the metaphor, how come it's been lost?
Biblical literalism.
All right.
In a biblical literalist mind view, there's no room for metaphor or allegory in the Bible, unless it's actually a parable. That's why if you look at the Christian church, you have a few Catholic denominations, and then you have the Orthodoxy, and you have a few Orthodox denominations. But then the second you hit the Protestant Reformation, you have more heresies and splits and sects than you can count. And the one thing that was supposed to keep them bound together was biblical literalism. Because even in the Middle Ages, they understood you can read a text any way you want.
Yeah, but doesn't doesn't the idea of the second coming, doesn't that start like right after the death of Christ? Like as soon as he died, then the disciples themselves believed that they were going to get raptured up in their lifetime. So it's not something that like the doomsday predictions don't just pick up, 400 years later. I thought it was like right then and there, like right from the get-go. There was like, hey guys, hang on, because it's going to get better. The Son of Man is going to come, and he's going to be here soon. Soon was
and
like
that was 2,000 years ago.
right, but right from the very start, there was no metaphor in that.
I mean, you can argue there is. Again, there's a socio-political context of you have a Jew preaching to Jews about a messianic prophecy. The Messiah wasn't supposed to be some heavenly figure. It was, you read the Old Testament, it was never a divine title. The Messiah just meant the person who was going to be the king. I mean, it was traditionally understood to be some sort of warrior king, almost always descended from David. The mythical first king. Well, not really the first king, third king, really, but depending on how you read it. First and second kings and judges. But he was supposed to usher in a new kingdom. It was all about Jewish autonomy in Palestine. It was still a political critique of Rome, even at that time.
Well, wouldn't you consider the I guess like thinking in those terms, wouldn't you consider the Messianic secret like the first rationalization of apocalyptic prophecy that didn't come true? Right, Jesus is here, and that's why in like there was no apocalypse. So then they have to have the Messianic secret where it was like, well, yeah, there kind of was, only nobody knew about it, and it was a secret.
Well, the Messianic secret is just a literary device Mark uses to sort of, it's the redactor winking at the reader, where people don't understand Jesus, but the reader obviously does. So it's sort of like a breaking the fourth wall, but it's still a literary construct, and I think it was even understood as that in the first or second century. Obviously, there have been crackpots throughout the ages. The first Christian doomsday prediction was Theodus in the year 44. Theodus was supposedly a disciple of Paul, who took a bunch of Jews out into the desert. How many did he take? He took about 400 people into the desert. And he declared himself the second Messiah. Like, he declared that he was the second coming himself. And Rome put it down pretty quickly. And he was beheaded.
Yeah.
But I think that comes out of, like, a literalistic reading of a second coming. I don't know how literal people took the second coming itself. On average.
Huh.
The early church is weird because you have so many different beliefs depending on who was reading what. So you really start to get this stuff, sometime around the 4th century when like a canon was being laid out and orthodoxy was beginning to be established, because you have people making rationalizations. What I think is the craziest rationalization of the church, the Trinity. It's almost impossible to explain because almost any explanation you come out of it with is something that has been at some point in time declared a heresy.
Well, it's the rationalizations of the doomsday prediction that I think I get the most chuckles out of.
Absolutely.
About like so the day comes and passes, and like how is it rationalized in the mind of the believer? and I think they all fall into three broad categories. The first one being, the first one is we were wrong and we have new information now. So that's what Brother Mike is doing. Like
Yeah.
they say, well, now we know something we didn't know, so now they changed their date. And then the second one would be, I guess, sort of what Harold Camping did and what the Jehovah's Witnesses did, and that rationalization, like, well, it happened, but either it's invisible or you didn't see it or it's going on right now. There's some rationalization that says like yeah, I was right, you just can't see it. And then the third one would be trying to think of who best fits that.
We were saved because of our...
Right. Oh, yeah, right. That's the other one. Yeah, so it was put off because of, we either prayed hard enough and it was put off, or God showed mercy on us and it was put off, or something like that. I think those are the big rationalizations, and everybody has a flavor of that.
Yeah. What I would like to look into as well is, I guess, not necessarily comparing the two, but there's like the Jesus identity syndrome. I can't remember what they actually call it, when somebody thinks that they are Jesus or they're the Messiah. Most common one that people think of is Charlie Manson. But it kind of sparked my thought when Ken was telling the story about the guy that took the Jews out to the field and said, "No, I'm the Messiah." Yeah. How many times it's happened in history, and if that actually the mentality behind the Jesus identity crisis thing?
A lot. Even before Jesus. Hold on. Let me see if I can...
I mean, it's like, also I would like to know how society at the time dealt with it. Like, here we're just like, whoa, those are crazy, but you don't... the people who said that, you just...
Well, I think I bet you could find that right now. Have you seen the Bill Maher movie Religious?
Yeah.
Right. He has a guy on that that's like, he's like, "I'm Jesus Christ," and he's like, "Well, you have the same name," and he's like, "No, I'm really Jesus Christ. Yeah. I'm reborn. I'm here on earth," and he's like, "Come on." And the guy's, I don't know whether the guy is sincere in his belief, but he appears to be so.
Yeah.
And whether he knows it or not, does he know he's pulling the wool over people's eyes? But then there are people who believe him.
Yeah, and that's what I remember. That's happened throughout history. I mean, I'm sure
he must have went to the Wagner Leadership Institute.
I think we need to contact these people that live today that believe that they're Jesus. Get them on the show and ask them about the doomsday predictions, and ask them, it's like, there's one coming up. Did you do this?
Well, I would. So one of the things I've been reading a lot, and I've noticed that a lot of the sort of Christian websites, they point at guys like Harold Camping and they say, "Oh, he's a false prophet." Mm-hmm. So it's really easy to be in the Christian camp and point the finger at guys like Harold Camping and say, well, he's a false prophet. He's not. I mean, it's the true Scotsman logical fallacy. He obviously doesn't represent our views. Largely he does. He's just wrong on this one point. That's the one thing you guys differ about, and so now you call him a false prophet.
Yeah.
So
it's like what we were talking about last week, though. Even in the school of becoming a prophet, that they can pick and choose what prophecies that you.
Yeah. I found him. I was looking for him. Simon of Perea. This is a messianic claimant who was killed by the Romans around the same time that Matthew has Jesus being born.
So it's the resurrection.
So
yeah. But I mean, he had been a slave under King Herod, and then eventually he came to be known as like as a Messiah figure, but he was killed by Romans. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
really funny. People who have this, like you were talking about the sort of like Christ mindset. When I was growing up, I had a friend whose dad had that. Like he was legitimately crazy. He had tattooed his forehead, and he would always go on these rants. And we thought it was good fun when we were kids, but it's
good, clean fun.
Like it was a little, disconcerting now to look back on it. But yeah,
Well, didn't David Koresh said that he was the coming of Christ,
Yep.
didn't he? He was
Yeah.
another one that said that he was.
He didn't say he was Christ, though.
So, but I thought he had some. I thought he had some claim to divinity.
I mean, I think he was. I mean, there's so much information and misinformation about that. I've seen so many different documentaries.
Yeah.
I can't keep it straight, but I think he was more of, and not to compare them, but a figurehead as in like the Heaven's Gate guy. He was the messenger, or what is it called when you rally up people? Not a messenger, but when you lead them across the bridge, the person. Anyway. He was the one. He was the bringer of.
Huh.
Of.
See, I thought he had a
No,
Christ
he
fixation
did.
too.
He did. He was. Yeah, he changed his name to David Koresh. David because he believed he was the spiritual lineage of King David, which would make him a Messiah, and Koresh is a transliteration of Cyrus, who was the Persian king who allowed the exiled Jews to return to Palestine. Yeah.
No, he was
Crazy
in a lethal way too.
Yeah.
But did they have a doomsday thing happening? I mean, because obviously they were preparing for something, right? That was why they had all of the guns.
And again, I've seen so many this side, that side thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's they were they're just having their own commune, and it was the FBI that brought on the violence, or that they were preparing for something and was stockpiling weapons, and the FBI was just protecting.
Yeah, the whole story is probably muddy beyond repair.
I mean, because there's so much information out there, and I've watched a lot of it and read a lot of it, but
like I think that like on one hand I can understand that apocalyptic mindset. Like we say I get it. It's born of that cognitive dissonance, and I understand how it takes hold. But I would also say that when that happens, it opens a lot of really dark doorways, man. Like you can do a lot of things when there's no tomorrow, man. You don't have to just watch Groundhog Day to figure that out.
yeah. I mean, but it's also it's so ingrained in our culture. It's not always negative and dark and destructive. I mean, look what we're doing the weekend of Halloween. We're celebrating a zombie apocalypse. People are dressing up as zombies
That's
and running.
all in good fun.
Well, I know, but it's but the apocalypse, doomsday is so ingrained in our culture. We enjoy as entertainment of mocking it, of taking part in fake.
All right. Well, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to have any fun.
He's like, okay. I'm going to be very angry. But we got 5 guys.
Okay.
But I mean, like,
we have 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's I don't know. Doomsday is just one of those things that, yeah, I think it is. It is a part of the, the collective subconscious now. It's everyone. Whether you believe it or not, everyone knows. Like that. It's just a part of our society now to predict the end. I mean, you walk into any, grocery store, and you're standing in line. There's going to be, copies of tabloid magazines with, 10 reasons why Nostradamus predicts that, next Thursday is going to be the end of the world. It's become almost a caricature of itself in some ways.
Right, but being so, since there's so many predictions, so many failed predictions, I can't see how it still manages to take hold.
Yeah.
You would think. I mean, they're all over. However many. That guy's website, he must list 1,000 of them, and none of them have come true.
Brief History of the Apocalypse. Yeah, it's pretty good.
He must have.
But when you combine that with Bible.ca/pre-datesetters.htm with hyphens between the words, this person lists 224. A lot of them aren't even over here at Brief History of the Apocalypse. So, yeah, there have been a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, with so many failed predictions like that, you would think that, I don't know.
If it was anything else, and you failed that many times, people would stop listening to you.
Right.
People would just I guess the proof in it is that it's not one person constantly doing it. It's a collective.
But they've all been wrong.
I know, but I guess it's the same thing that we talk about on the show a lot. It's easier to apply logic to it, like when you read the Bible, when you read this section, then this section, and this section, instead of taking it from start to end. Yeah. And since there's so many predictions over here and over here and over here, it's easier to look at them as individual instead of as a collective fail.
Yeah, I agree. It is a collective fail.
So I guess that's why it takes on. I mean, even in our short story that we were talking about how, I forget the name of the person, but he was killed by the Romans roughly the same time Jesus was born. In that mind, if it makes me want to look into it more to see how many times this story of Messiah has been told in the same exact vein where the Romans killed him before this story of Jesus caught on.
Well, that's funny because I think the answer is several, and I think more specifically it's like 5.
Yeah.
Like there's like 5 different guys who fit that messianic mold, and they die in a certain way, and the apologetics answer or response to those guys, those pre-Christ messiahs, was that those were put there prior to the birth of Christ by Satan to confuse us to the true Messiah.
But I've heard people also say, well, it's, and the reincarnation thing, it's just because he was killed, he wasn't fulfilled, and Jesus' spirit, and that's why abortion is continued, or is not allowed in the Christian view today, because you may be killing the next Jesus, the second coming.
With logic like that,
support abortion.
Which would be an amazing death metal band name, Aborted Jesus.
Aborted Jesus.
I think it's probably already used.
It probably is.
But we hit the mark.
Did we hit the mark?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We could talk about this forever. There are just so many of them. We could just start listing them. I do like the fact that you included the Prophet Hen of Leeds in the top 10.
Yeah, that was a hoax.
That's a great one. It was a hoax. The woman used corrosive ink on the eggs.
Then shoved them back inside the chicken.
Inside the head.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, somebody doctored the eggs and then shoved them back inside the chicken, and then the chicken laid the magic eggs.
I was in Florida working on a campaign back in 2001 or 2002, and it was outside of Fort Lauderdale area, and there was a image of the Virgin Mary on the side of a building, and people were coming from all over to lay flowers and pray, and I got to witness that, so that was pretty awesome.
Oh my gosh. Pareidolia.
That's one of those things. Like we'll get into
Yeah.
images because that's I mean
'Cause it's
that's
fun.
like an integral part of like the human psyche is to see things that aren't necessarily there.
Well, faces are the number one thing that we
Yeah,
see.
faces.
Yeah, well,
The,
because
the effect is called pareidolia.
Yeah.
I mean, it has an evolutionary advantage. If you're a caveman, you're sitting, sleeping in a cave, and you wake up in the middle of the night, it's more advantageous to see a tiger that isn't there than to not see the one that is.
Maybe we can do a whole show on grilled cheeses.
Yeah.
We could totally all make grilled cheese and just sit and eat and make it until we find,
There's a little
prophecy.
stamp you can
just
put
make
on
it
it that
until we
makes the
see.
image.
Well, we have a Hello Kitty toaster that puts the face of Hello Kitty on the toast, so
Nice.
we could doctor it a little bit and make it Jesus or something. I don't know. But anyway,
Hello,
I think
Jesus.
hello
Yeah.
Jesus.
Hello, Jesus.
We gotta make those shirts.
Yeah.
But anyway,
All right. So I think this is the end of the show. So, I mean, let us know what you thought. I don't have my docs in front of me, so I don't remember the phone number, even though I give it out every week.
I'll put it up on the screen.
Yes. That's the number right there. Hey, it works.
You
Oh
can
my
point
God.
to it like,
Hold on, I got it. If docs will let me scroll down. It is 757-337-2195. Email us. If there's something you thought we left out, something you want us to cover in a future episode, you can always, email us at nonreligious@zombie-popcorn.com. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/thisnonreligiouslife. Leave us comments there, comment on our photos. And, you can always download all the shows on iTunes and leave feedback. So let us know what you thought. And like I said, anything you think we should cover in the future episode, let us know. We're always looking for feedback. Anything you want to say, guys?
Coming soon, This Non-Religious Life dance.
Oh, God.
Anyway, y'all have a good night.
All right.
good night.
Jesus got out here.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Jesus got out here. Then I read this. It says Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian.
The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies.